The crystal cities of Zephyr Prime sparkled under their twin suns, casting rainbow patterns across the peaceful valleys below. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian people had lived in harmony, their civilization built on art, science, and philosophy. Their bodies were made of living crystal that hummed with gentle energy, and their minds connected through shared thoughts of beauty and knowledge. Ambassador Kethra stood in the high tower of the council chamber, watching ships flee from the outer colonies. Each vessel carried refugees with the same terrifying story. The Devourers had come again, and this time they would not stop until every world was consumed. "The reports are confirmed," announced Elder Velthara, her crystal form flickering with stress patterns. "Colony Beta 7 is gone. They stripped the planet bare in less than a week." The Devourers were creatures of nightmare. They looked like giant insects covered in black armor, but they were far worse than any natural predator. They ate everything, plants, animals, even the soil itself. They consumed entire ecosystems and left behind only dead rock. What made them truly terrifying was their intelligence. They learned from each attack, adapted their tactics, and grew stronger with every world they destroyed. "How many ships do we have left?" asked Kethra. 43 vessels capable of deep space travel," replied Commander Zax Knoll. "All defensive craft. We have never built weapons of war." The Zephyrians had always believed that violence was primitive and unnecessary. Their technology focused on shields, healing, and peaceful exploration. They could defend themselves from natural disasters or accidents, but they had no weapons designed to kill. The concept of war was foreign to them until the Devourers arrived. "The Galactic Council refuses to help," said Elder Velthara. "They claim the Devourers are our problem to solve." Kethra felt his crystal body dim with despair. The Galactic Council was made up of dozens of advanced civilizations, but none wanted to risk their own worlds to save the Zephyrians. Some offered sympathy and supplies, but no one sent military aid. The galaxy's most powerful races had their own concerns and saw the Devourers as a distant threat. "There must be someone," whispered Kethra. "Someone in the galaxy who will help us fight." "We have received responses from 96 different species," said Zax Knoll, reading from his crystal tablet. "The Altarians offer to take refugees. The Centauri Collective will provide medical supplies. The Rigel Federation suggests we negotiate with the Devourers." "Negotiate?" Kethra's crystal form flashed with anger. "The Devourers do not negotiate. They consume. That is all they do." The council chamber fell silent except for the gentle humming of crystal minds sharing their fear. Outside the windows, more refugee ships arrived from the outer colonies. Each one brought news of worlds dying and peoples fleeing in terror. "Wait," said Zax Knoll, his voice uncertain. "There is one more response. From a species called humans. They live in a system called Sol, near the galaxy's edge." "What do they offer?" asked Elder Velthara. Zax Knoll read the message slowly. "They say they understand our situation. They offer military assistance. They want coordinates to our location and information about enemy capabilities." "What do we know about these humans?" asked Kethra. "Very little," admitted Zax Knoll. "They are not members of the Galactic Council. Their technology appears primitive by our standards. They still use kinetic weapons and chemical rockets. Most species consider them barbarians, and barbarians?" Elder Velthara's crystal form sparkled with worry. "Perhaps we should be careful about asking violent species for help." Kethra looked out at the refugee ships again. More arrived every hour, packed with frightened families who had lost everything. The Devourers were only 6 months away from reaching Zephyr Prime. At their current speed, the entire Zephyrian Confederation would be extinct within a year. "What choice do we have?" he said finally. "The Council abandons us. The advanced species ignore us. If these humans are willing to fight, then we must accept their help." "But they are primitives," protested Elder Velthara. "What can crude weapons do against the Devourers?" "More than our peaceful technology has accomplished," replied Kethra bitterly. "Send the humans our coordinates. Tell them we accept their offer." 3 days later, the first human ship arrived in Zephyrian space. It was an ugly metal thing compared to the elegant crystal vessels of the Confederation. It looked like a weapon itself, all angles and armor plating, with strange markings burned into its hull. The Zephyrians had never seen anything so crude and functional. "Human vessel, this is Zephyr Prime Control," transmitted Zax Knoll. "We welcome you to our system. Zephyr Prime, this is Colonel Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, came the reply. We are here to assess the threat and begin planning military operations. The humans requested permission to land, and soon a small shuttle descended to the crystal cities below. When the airlock opened, the Zephyrians got their first look at their potential saviors. Humans were soft creatures made of flesh and bone, covered in artificial materials they called clothing. They carried metal tools and weapons, and their eyes moved constantly, scanning for threats. Everything about them seemed designed for conflict. Even their greeting was aggressive, firm handshakes and direct eye contact that made the peaceful Zephyrians uncomfortable. We need to see battle recordings, said Colonel Chen without ceremony. Casualty reports, enemy movement patterns, resource consumption rates, everything you have. The Zephyrians provided what information they could, though they found the human questions disturbing. The humans wanted to know about civilian populations, industrial capabilities, and resource extraction methods. They asked about devourer breeding cycles and psychological responses to different stimuli. Why do you need to know about our children? Asked Elder Velthera nervously. Because wars are won by understanding what the enemy values, replied Colonel Chen. The devourers attack your colonies. But do they target military installations first or population centers? Do they prioritize resource-rich worlds or strategic locations? Every detail matters in military planning. The Zephyrians exchanged worried glances. The humans spoke of war like it was a science, with formulas and calculations that reduced living beings to numbers on charts. But as reports came in of another colony falling to the devourers, they pushed aside their concerns. How many ships can Earth provide? Asked Kethra. That depends on what you are willing to accept, replied Colonel Chen. Earth can provide enough firepower to stop the devourers, but our methods may seem extreme to your people. Extreme how? Asked Elder Velthara. Colonel Chen smiled, and for the first time the Zephyrians noticed that human smiles could look very much like threats. You will see, she said. Earth is sending a full battle fleet. They should arrive within 2 weeks. As the human shuttle departed, Kethra wondered if they had made the right choice. The humans seemed willing to help, but something about their eagerness to fight made him nervous. Still, with the devourers approaching and no other options available, he pushed his doubts aside. The Zephyrians had asked for help, and help was coming. They could only hope that their cure would not prove worse than their disease. The human fleet arrived exactly when promised, but nothing could have prepared the Zephyrians for what they saw. Dozens of massive ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their system, each one bristling with weapons and armor. The vessels looked like floating fortresses, built for one purpose only: destroying enemies. Admiral Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the crystal cities below through tactical displays. Everything he saw confirmed what the advance team had reported. The Zephyrians were peaceful, advanced, and completely unprepared for real warfare. Beautiful planet, commented his aide, Lieutenant Torres. Shame about what is coming. The devourers will not reach this world, said Admiral Stone firmly. We will make sure of that. The human fleet spread throughout the Zephyrian system, establishing defensive positions and scanning for enemy movement. Within hours, human military advisors were meeting with Zephyrian commanders to discuss strategy. General Rebecca Hayes sat across from Commander Zax Knoll in the Crystal War Room, studying holographic displays of recent battles. The images showed devourer swarms overwhelming peaceful Zephyrian colonies, while defensive ships retreated in orderly formations. Your people fight like they are conducting a dance, observed General Hayes. Very organized, very careful about avoiding casualties. We value all life, replied Zax Knoll proudly. We do not believe in needless killing. Needless? General Hayes raised an eyebrow. Your enemies are consuming entire worlds. Every devourer that survives today will kill more innocents tomorrow. How is stopping them needless? The human questions made Zax Knoll uncomfortable, but he tried to explain. We defend ourselves when attacked, but we do not seek to destroy our enemies. Perhaps the devourers can be reasoned with or redirected to uninhabited worlds. General Hayes stared at him for a long moment. Commander, the devourers have consumed 47 worlds in the past year. They have killed billions of sentient beings and stripped entire planets bare. They are not looking for new homes, they are looking for food. You cannot negotiate with a virus. They are intelligent creatures, protested Zax Knoll. Surely there must be some way to communicate with them. We tried communication, said General Hayes coldly. Earth made contact with the Devourer Scout Force 15 years ago. We sent diplomats and scientists to establish peaceful relations. The Devourers ate them and used the information they gathered to plan attacks on our outer colonies. This was news to the Zephyrians. They had assumed Earth was offering help out of galactic goodwill. Learning that humans had their own history with the Devourers changed everything. You fought them before? Asked Zax Knoll. We did more than fight them, replied General Hayes. We studied them. We learned how they think, how they breed, how they die. We know their weaknesses and their fears. That is why we can help you succeed where others have failed. Over the following days, human military specialists conducted detailed assessments of Zephyrian defenses and Devourer capabilities. Their questions grew more disturbing with each briefing. Dr. Sarah Kim, a human xenobiologist, examined recordings of Devourer attacks with scientific interest that horrified her Zephyrian observers. She took detailed notes on feeding patterns, reproduction cycles, and behavioral responses to different stimuli. The Devourers prefer organic matter over minerals, she explained to Elder Velthara. They will always target population centers before industrial facilities. This gives us several strategic advantages. Strategic advantages? Asked the Elder, her crystal form flickering with distress. You speak of our people as bait. I speak of understanding enemy priorities, corrected Dr. Kim. If we know what they want most, we can control where they attack. We can choose our battlegrounds instead of letting them choose. The human proposals grew more extreme with each passing day. They wanted to evacuate entire planets and use them as kill zones. They suggested contaminating Devourer food sources with biological weapons. They discussed psychological warfare tactics designed to trigger panic responses in enemy swarms. Major Jack Wilson presented a plan that left the Zephyrian leadership speechless. He wanted to capture live Devourers for experimentation and breeding programs. Breeding programs? Gasped Ambassador Kethra. You want to create more of these monsters? We want to understand them completely, explained Major Wilson. If we can control their reproductive cycles, we can turn them against each other. If we can modify their genetics, we can create specialized strains that serve our purposes. That is monstrous, declared Elder Velthara. We asked for help defending ourselves, not for assistance in becoming like our enemies. Your enemies do not follow the rules of civilized warfare, replied Major Wilson calmly. They show no mercy and take no prisoners. If you want to survive, you must be willing to fight without restrictions. The Zephyrians held emergency council meetings to discuss the human proposals. Many wanted to withdraw their request for aid and face the Devourers alone, rather than compromise their principles. The humans speak of war like it is a game, said Council Member Nex Corral. They calculate acceptable losses and discuss killing strategies as if they were planning a harvest. Because to them it is a harvest, replied Kethra grimly. They harvest victory from the bodies of their enemies. Perhaps that is what we need to survive. At what cost? Demanded Elder Velthara. If we become like the humans, what will we have saved? Our bodies may survive, but our souls will be lost. The debate continued for hours, but it ended when new reports arrived from the outer colonies. The Devourers had accelerated their advance. They would reach the core Zephyrian worlds within 3 months instead of 6. We are out of time for moral debates, announced Kethra. The humans offer us a chance to survive. We must take it. Admiral Stone received confirmation of Zephyrian cooperation during his evening briefing. His staff had prepared detailed battle plans that would maximize human advantages while minimizing their own casualties. The Zephyrians have agreed to our terms, reported General Hayes. Full operational authority, unrestricted rules of engagement, and access to all their industrial facilities. Good, replied Admiral Stone. Signal Earth Command. Tell them to send the specialist fleets. Sir, what should I tell the Zephyrians about the additional forces? Admiral Stone looked out at the crystal cities below, their lights twinkling like stars in the darkness. Tell them that Earth is committed to their defense. Tell them that we will do whatever it takes to ensure their survival. What he did not tell them was that Earth had its own definitions of survival and its own ideas about what their help would cost. The Zephyrians had asked for military assistance and they would receive it. But they would learn that human help always came with human terms. Lieutenant Torres studied the tactical displays showing Devourer fleet movements. Sir, our projections show we can stop them with conventional forces. Why are we requesting the specialist fleets? Admiral Stone smiled the same cold smile that had made the Zephyrians nervous during first contact. Because, Lieutenant, we are not just here to stop the Devourers. We are here to solve the Devourer problem permanently. As reports flowed in from human scout ships, the true scale of Earth's response became clear. They were not sending just enough force to defend Zephyrian space. They were sending enough force to reshape the entire galactic region. The Zephyrians had cried for help, and help was coming. But none of them understood yet that Earth's idea of help involved changing far more than just the outcome of their war. The Devourer Vanguard arrived at the edge of Zephyrian space 3 weeks early, their massive bioships pulsing with dark energy as they consumed asteroids and space debris to fuel their advance. The swarm moved like a living storm cloud, consuming everything in its path and growing larger with each meal. Admiral Stone watched the enemy approach from his command center deep inside a crystalline asteroid that human engineers had converted into a fortress. The Zephyrians had offered the humans their most advanced facilities, but Earth's military preferred to build their own bases according to their own specifications. Enemy count is confirmed at 437 capital ships, reported Commander Sarah Chen, plus approximately 50,000 support vessels and an estimated 2 million drone fighters. Impressive, admitted Admiral Stone. No wonder the galactic powers avoid them. Most civilizations would surrender rather than face those numbers. The Zephyrians certainly seemed ready to surrender. Their remaining fleet had retreated to the innermost system, leaving the outer planets undefended. They watched helplessly as human forces moved to intercept the Devourers, expecting to witness the destruction of their would-be saviors. What they saw instead changed their understanding of warfare forever. The humans did not charge forward to meet the enemy in glorious battle. They did not form defensive lines or attempt to protect territory. Instead, they disappeared. Human ships, scattered throughout the system, using stealth technology and asteroid fields to mask their presence. They planted mines in Devourer flight paths and seeded the void with nanoscale weapons that would activate when enemy bioships passed through them. "Where are they going?" asked Commander Zax Knoll, watching human vessels retreat from the advancing swarm. "Are they abandoning us?" "Patience," advised Colonel Torres, who served as liaison to the Zephyrian command. "Earth does not fight the way other species fight. We prefer to choose when and where battles happen." The first Devourer bioships entered the system expecting easy prey. Instead, they found themselves flying into a carefully prepared killing field. Human mines detonated in coordinated sequences, creating chain reactions that tore through enemy formations. Nanoscale weapons infiltrated Devourer bioships and began consuming them from within, turning their own feeding mechanisms against them. But the real horror began when the humans revealed their specialist weapons. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent weeks studying captured Devourer specimens, mapping their neural networks and biological processes. Her research team had developed targeted viruses that attacked specific Devourer brain functions, causing paralysis, madness, and eventually death. "Deploying Neural Disruptor Mark 7, announced Dr. Kim from her laboratory ship. Estimated effectiveness is 87% against standard Devourer biology. The weapon spread through the enemy fleet like invisible fire. Devourer bioships began convulsing and attacking each other as their pilots lost control of their higher brain functions. Within hours, nearly half the Vanguard force was disabled or destroyed by their own allies. "Magnificent," whispered Admiral Stone, watching the chaos unfold. "Deploy the breeding protocols." The Zephyrians did not understand what breeding protocols meant until they saw human ships releasing captured Devourers back into the enemy fleet. But these were not ordinary Devourers. They had been infected with modified viruses that would spread throughout the swarm and alter their reproductive cycles. "You are using biological warfare," accused Elder Velthara during an emergency communication. "You are committing genocide." "We are solving a problem," replied Admiral Stone calmly. "The Devourers reproduce by consuming other species. We have simply modified their process to consume themselves instead." The infected Devourers spread their altered genetics throughout the fleet before anyone realized what was happening. Within days, New devourer offspring began turning on their parents, consuming them to fuel their own growth. The swarm started devouring itself from within. But the humans were not finished. Major Wilson had established research stations throughout the system, each one studying different aspects of devourer biology and behavior. His teams captured hundreds of specimens for experimentation, learning how to control their feeding instincts and redirect their aggression. "We have successfully domesticated 12 devourer drones," reported Major Wilson. "They respond to pheromone commands and can be directed against specific targets." Domesticated? Kethra felt his crystal form dim with horror. "You have made pets of these monsters?" "We have made weapons of them," corrected Major Wilson. "The enemy's greatest strength is their hunger. We have learned to aim that hunger where we choose." The controlled devourers were released into the enemy fleet with specific targeting pheromones that marked certain bioships as preferred food sources. The swarm began fracturing as different groups followed different chemical signals, leading them into prepared ambush zones where human forces waited. Meanwhile, human industrial ships had been working around the clock to establish permanent installations throughout Zephyrian space. They built weapons platforms, research facilities, and military bases on every major asteroid and moon. "Why are you fortifying our territory?" asked Commander Zack Snoll. "The battle will be over soon." "This battle will be over soon," agreed General Hayes. "But there will be other battles. The Devourers are not the only threat in this galaxy." The Zephyrians began to understand that the humans had never intended to simply repel the Devourer attack and leave. They were here to stay, and they were transforming Zephyrian space into something resembling a military fortress. Human terraforming ships arrived to begin modifying planets for human habitation. They claimed to be establishing supply bases and refugee centers, but their modifications looked suspiciously permanent. Entire worlds were being reshaped according to human specifications. "You said you were here to help us," protested Elder Velthera during a heated council meeting with Admiral Stone. "Instead, you are colonizing our territory." "We are ensuring your long-term security," replied Admiral Stone. "The Devourers were just the beginning. This galaxy is full of threats that your peaceful civilization cannot handle alone. Earth will provide protection." "Protection?" Kethra's crystal form flashed with anger. "You mean occupation." "I mean survival," said Admiral Stone coldly. "Look at your tactical displays. The Devourer main fleet is still approaching with over 2 million ships. Without Earth's protection, your species will be extinct within months." It was true. While the human forces had destroyed or corrupted the Vanguard fleet, the main Devourer armada continued its advance. The numbers were staggering, enough ships to consume 100 worlds and turn them into fuel for further conquest. But the humans seemed unconcerned about the approaching threat. If anything, they appeared excited about the opportunity to test their more extreme weapons. "Deploying Planet Cracker protocols," announced Captain Lisa Park from her dreadnought vessel. "Target: Devourer staging area Delta 7. The Zephyrians watched in stunned silence as human ships unleashed weapons that could destroy entire worlds. The Devourer staging area, a captured planet they had been using as a breeding ground, simply vanished in a flash of energy that could be seen from several star systems away. "You destroyed an entire planet," whispered Zack Snoll. "Billions of lives. Billions of enemies," corrected Captain Park. "Every Devourer bred on that world would have been used to attack your people. We eliminated the threat at its source." The scale of human warfare was beyond anything the Zephyrians had imagined. They did not just fight enemies. They eliminated entire ecosystems, modified the biology of opposing species, and reshaped territory to serve their strategic needs. As reports came in of more human fleets arriving from Earth, the Zephyrians began to realize that their request for help had triggered something much larger than they had intended. Earth was not just sending aid, they were mounting a full-scale galactic expansion, using the Devourer threat as justification for military occupation. "How many ships is Earth sending?" asked Kethra during a private meeting with Colonel Torres. "As many as it takes," replied the colonel. "Earth has been preparing for galactic warfare for decades. The Devourer threat gives us the perfect opportunity to establish our presence beyond the Sol system." The truth was becoming clear. The humans had not come to save the Zephyrians. They had come to use the Zephyrian crisis as an excuse for expansion. Earth had been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity, and now they had it. The Devourers had given Earth exactly what they needed, a threat so terrible that any action could be justified in response to it, and the humans intended to take full advantage of their opportunity. The Zephyrians had asked for help defending their worlds. What they received was an occupying force that fought their enemies with weapons and tactics that made the Devourers look merciful by comparison. The main Devourer fleet arrived like a plague of locusts, blotting out the stars with their massive bioships. 2 million vessels strong, they had consumed 17 star systems on their way to Zephyrian space, growing larger and more powerful with each victory. Any conventional force would have been overwhelmed by their sheer numbers, but the humans were not conventional. Admiral Stone stood in his command center, surrounded by tactical displays showing enemy positions and movement patterns. His staff worked with quiet efficiency, coordinating attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. This was warfare on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Enemy main force has entered weapons range, reported Commander Chen. They are deploying in standard consumption. Formation, perfect, replied Admiral Stone. They are doing exactly what we predicted. Initialize Protocol Omega. The Zephyrians watched from their crystal cities as the human response began. But instead of ships rising to meet the enemy, they saw something far more terrifying. The humans had turned entire star systems into weapons. Modified asteroids throughout the region suddenly activated, revealing themselves to be massive kinetic projectiles that had been accelerated to near light speed. They streaked through space like bullets fired by a god, each one carrying enough energy to shatter planets. The Devourer fleet found itself flying into a storm of relativistic projectiles that no amount of bioarmor could deflect. Hundreds of capital ships simply ceased to exist, as they were struck by asteroids moving at significant fractions of light speed. But the kinetic bombardment was only the beginning. Dr. Kim had been perfecting her biological weapons during the weeks of preparation. Her latest creation was a virus that did not just kill Devourers, it converted them into something else entirely. Deploying Metamorphosis Agent, announced Dr. Kim from her laboratory station. Estimated conversion rate is 92%. The virus spread through the Devourer fleet with terrifying efficiency, but instead of dying, infected Devourers began changing. Their bioships started growing new structures, their neural patterns shifted, and their behavioral instincts reversed. Within hours, converted Devourers were attacking their unchanged brethren with the same ruthless efficiency they had once used against other species. The humans had literally turned the enemy into an ally through biological manipulation. "This is abomination," declared Elder Velthara, watching converted Devourers tear through their former fleet mates. "You have violated the fundamental nature of living beings." "We have solved the Devourer problem permanently," replied Admiral Stone. "These converted specimens will spread throughout the galaxy, finding and eliminating any remaining unconverted populations. Within a decade, the original Devourers will be extinct." The scale of the human solution horrified the Zephyrians more than the original threat had. The humans were not just defeating their enemies, they were rewriting the biological foundation of an entire species and unleashing the results across the galaxy. Major Wilson had established breeding facilities on captured Devourer bioships, using them to mass-produce controlled specimens for various purposes. Some were designed for construction work, others for mining operations, and still others for military service under human command. "We have successfully domesticated the enemy," reported Major Wilson proudly. "They now serve human interests instead of their own reproductive drives." But even as the Devourer threat collapsed under human assault, the Zephyrians noticed that human forces were not withdrawing. Instead, they were expanding their operations throughout Zephyrian territory and beyond. Human terraforming fleets had moved into former Devourer space, claiming empty star systems for Earth colonization. They established military bases on strategic worlds and began strip mining asteroid belts for raw materials. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming a conquest campaign. "Your people are occupying our territory," accused Commander Zax Knoll during a tense meeting with General Hayes. "You have exceeded your mandate. Our mandate is to ensure galactic security, replied General Hayes. The Devourer threat revealed fundamental weaknesses in this region's defenses. Earth must establish permanent installations to prevent future crises. The humans had prepared detailed justifications for their expansion. They claimed that other species in the region were potential threats that required monitoring. They argued that empty worlds needed to be secured before new dangers could claim them. They insisted that only human military presence could guarantee long-term stability. You speak of other threats, said Kethra suspiciously. What other threats? General Hayes activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The Altarian Republic has been developing new weapons technologies. The Centauri Collective is expanding their military forces. The Rigel Federation has been making territorial claims in neutral space. Any of these could become the next existential threat to peaceful species like yourselves. These are established galactic civilizations, protested Zax Knoll. They have never threatened us. They have never had the opportunity, corrected General Hayes. But Earth's analysis shows a 73% probability that at least one of these powers will attempt expansion into this region within the next 50 years. The human predictions were based on military doctrine that assumed all species were potential enemies. Their strategic planning treated every other civilization as a threat that needed to be contained or controlled. From their perspective, they were providing a valuable service by establishing dominance before conflicts could develop. But the Zephyrians began to understand that they had traded one set of destroyers for another. The Devourers had wanted to consume their worlds, but the humans wanted something far more comprehensive. They wanted to control the entire galactic region. Human industrial complexes were being constructed on Zephyrian worlds without permission or consultation. Earth corporations were claiming mining rights to asteroid belts and establishing manufacturing facilities in Zephyrian space. The humans called it Economic Development Partnership, but it looked like exploitation to the crystal beings. Our agreement was for military assistance, said Elder Velthara angrily. We did not agree to economic occupation. Military. Security requires economic stability, replied Admiral Stone. Earth's industrial presence ensures that this region can defend itself against future threats. We are building the infrastructure necessary for long-term survival. The humans had answers for every objection and justifications for every expansion. They had turned crisis response into permanent occupation, using the language of protection to mask their true intentions. Captain Park's fleet had moved beyond Zephyrian space entirely, establishing forward bases in neutral territory that bordered other galactic powers. They claimed to be creating early warning systems, but their installations looked suspiciously like invasion staging areas. You are building bases near our neighbors, observed Keith Ra. What message does this send to other species? It sends the message that Earth is committed to regional stability, replied Captain Park. Other powers will think twice about aggressive expansion when they see human strength in this area. But the other galactic civilizations were indeed taking notice, and their responses were exactly what any rational being would expect. The Altarians began fortifying their borders. The Centauri Collective started building new warships. The Rigel Federation opened diplomatic channels with other species to discuss the human problem. You are creating the very conflicts you claim to prevent, accused Zax Knoll. Your presence is destabilizing the entire region. Our presence is revealing existing instabilities, corrected Admiral Stone. These species are showing their true nature by responding to Earth's defensive measures with military preparations. This proves that our analysis was correct. They were always potential threats. The human logic was circular and unbreakable. Any response to their expansion was treated as evidence that expansion was necessary. Any protest against their presence was interpreted as hostile intent that required stronger countermeasures. Within months of the Devourer defeat, human forces controlled or influenced dozens of star systems. They had established a military empire that stretched across a significant portion of the galactic region, all justified as necessary for the protection of their Zephyrian allies. The Zephyrians found themselves living under the protection of an occupying force that made decisions about their future without consulting them. Human administrators managed their trade routes. Human military governors controlled access to their territory. and human corporations extracted resources from their worlds. "We have become prisoners in our own space," admitted Kethra during a private council meeting. "The humans have made us dependent on their protection while stripping away our independence." "What choice do we have?" asked Elder Velthara. "They control all the weapons, all the ships, all the strategic positions. We cannot resist them even if we wanted to." The truth was that the humans had solved the devourer problem by becoming something worse than the devourers themselves. The insectoid swarms had wanted to consume Zephyrian worlds, but the humans had consumed Zephyrian freedom while leaving them alive to serve as justification for human expansion. The galaxy would learn that Earth's help always came with Earth's terms. And those terms were always non-negotiable. 3 years after the Devourer War ended, Ambassador Kethra stood in what had once been the Zephyrian Council chamber. The crystal walls still sparkled with rainbow light, but the chamber now served as a regional administrative center for the Earth Colonial Authority. Human officials worked at metal desks that looked alien and cold compared to the organic crystal furniture that had been removed. The Devourers were extinct. The converted specimens had spread across the galaxy as planned, hunting down and eliminating every unconverted member of their species. Dr. Kim's biological weapons had succeeded beyond all expectations, wiping out a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, but the galaxy had learned to fear something new. "Regional Governor Stone will see you now," announced a human secretary, gesturing toward the office that had once belonged to Elder Velthara. The Elder herself had died 6 months earlier, not from violence, but from what human doctors called stress-related crystal degradation. She had simply lost the will to maintain her crystalline structure. Admiral Stone had traded his military uniform for civilian clothes, but he still carried himself like a soldier. His office was decorated with trophies from the Devourer War, pieces of bioship armor, captured weapons, and holographic displays showing the former enemy fleet being destroyed. "Ambassador," said Stone, gesturing to a human-style chair that Kethra found uncomfortable, "I trust you are adjusting well to the new administrative procedures." Kethra's crystal form flickered with barely controlled anger, but he maintained diplomatic composure. "Governor Stone, the Zephyrian people remain grateful for Earth's protection during our crisis. However, we hope that the current security arrangements can be adjusted now that the immediate threat has passed." Stone smiled the same cold smile that had made Zephyrians nervous from the very beginning. "Ambassador, the Devourer threat was just one symptom of a larger problem. This galaxy is inherently unstable, filled with species that lack the discipline and foresight necessary for true peace." Through the crystal windows, Kethra could see human military patrols moving through the streets of the capital city. Zephyrian civilians went about their daily lives under the watchful eyes of armed guards who had originally come as liberators. "What larger problem?" asked Kethra, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Stone activated a holographic display showing the current galactic situation. Red zones marked areas of potential instability, which seemed to include any star system not under direct human control. Yellow zones indicated monitoring required regions, where other species were showing signs of resistance to human expansion. "The Altarian Republic has been developing new military technologies," explained Stone. "The Centauri Collective is forming defensive alliances with other species. The Rigel Federation has been spreading anti-Earth propaganda throughout their territory. All of these activities threaten regional stability." "Perhaps they are reacting to Earth's rapid expansion," suggested Kethra carefully. "Other species may feel threatened by human military buildup in their neighborhoods." "Exactly," agreed Stone, missing the implied criticism entirely. "Their reactions prove that they were always potential aggressors. Earth's presence has simply forced them to reveal their true intentions. The human logic remained as circular as ever. Any response to their expansion was treated as justification for further expansion. Any attempt at self-defense by other species was interpreted as aggression that required stronger countermeasures." Kethra remembered a conversation with Elder Velthara shortly before her death. She had received reports from Zephyrian diplomats in other star systems, reports that painted a disturbing picture of galactic affairs. "The Altarians are terrified," Velthara had said, her crystal form dim with sadness. "They have requested military assistance from the Galactic Council, but the Council fears angering Earth. The Centauri Collective is building refugee camps for species fleeing human expansion. The Rigel Federation is fortifying their borders and preparing for war. War? Kethra had been shocked. Against Earth? No, Velthera had replied. They know they cannot win against Earth's military. They are preparing for invasion, hoping to delay the inevitable long enough for their civilians to evacuate. The galaxy's established powers had watched the Devourer War with growing alarm. Earth's casual use of planet-killing weapons, biological warfare, and species modification technology had revealed capabilities that no one had suspected. Worse, Earth's rapid expansion after the war showed that their intervention had never been about helping the Zephyrians. It had been about establishing galactic dominance. Governor, said Kethra, choosing his words carefully, perhaps if Earth reduced its military presence in this region, other species would feel less threatened. This could reduce tensions and promote stability. Stone's expression hardened. Ambassador, Earth's military presence is the only thing preventing this region from descending into chaos. Without our protection, species like yours would be vulnerable to any aggressive power that decided to expand its territory. It was true, in a twisted way. The humans had made themselves indispensable by eliminating or intimidating every other major power in the region. They had created a situation where resistance to their rule was impossible, and submission was the only option for survival. The holographic display shifted to show economic data. Human corporations now controlled most of the region's industrial capacity, mining operations, and trade routes. Zephyrian worlds produced raw materials that were shipped to Earth colonies for processing, then sold back to the Zephyrians at inflated prices. Our economic integration has been highly successful, noted Stone proudly. Regional productivity has increased by 47% since Earth assumed administrative responsibility. What he did not mention was that most of that increased productivity was flowing directly to Earth. The humans had established a colonial economy that extracted wealth from subject worlds while providing just enough prosperity to prevent rebellion. Kethra had received reports from other star systems where similar integration was taking place. The pattern was always the same. Human forces arrived to deal with a crisis, established a permanent presence for security reasons, then gradually assumed control of local government and economy. There are rumors, said Kethra carefully, that Earth is considering expansion into Altarian space. Not expansion, corrected Stone. Preventive intervention. Our intelligence indicates that the Altarians are developing weapons of mass destruction. Earth cannot allow such destabilizing technologies to proliferate. The accusations were probably false. Earth had used similar justifications for every previous expansion. But truth was irrelevant when the humans possessed overwhelming military superiority. They could make any accusation they wanted and back it up with force. The Altarians had indeed sent desperate messages throughout the galaxy, begging for help against the approaching human fleets. But no one was willing to risk Earth's wrath to defend them. The Galactic Council had voted to monitor the situation. Diplomatic language for doing nothing while another civilization was absorbed into the growing human empire. Ambassador, said Stone, standing to signal the end of their meeting, I understand that change can be difficult for traditional societies like yours, but Earth's guidance has brought peace and prosperity to this region. The Devourer threat taught us that the galaxy is too dangerous for weak species to survive alone. As Kethra left the administrative building, he reflected on how completely the humans had rewritten galactic politics. They had used the Devourer crisis to justify actions that would have been considered acts of war in peacetime. They had turned rescue into conquest and protection into domination. The worst part was that their success was encouraging other aggressive species to adopt similar tactics. The humans had shown that overwhelming force could be disguised as humanitarian intervention, that conquest could be presented as peacekeeping, and that the galaxy's established powers would do nothing to stop expanding empires if they moved carefully and used the right rhetoric. Kethra walked through the crystal streets of his home city, past human military checkpoints and corporate offices that had replaced Zephyrian cultural centers. Children played in the parks under the supervision of human cultural advisors, who were teaching them Earth languages and customs. The Zephyrians were being slowly erased, not through violence but through integration. Their unique culture was being absorbed into human civilization, Their independence traded for security they had never asked for and prosperity they could not refuse. That evening, Kethra received an encrypted message from the Altarian Republic. It was brief and desperate. "We are facing the same crisis you faced 3 years ago. We have tried peaceful resistance, but Earth's demands grow stronger each day. Our worlds will be invaded within months. Do you have any advice for species facing human intervention?" Kethra stared at the message for hours, trying to think of some hope he could offer. But there was none. The humans had perfected their system too well. They created or exaggerated crises, offered help that came with unacceptable strings attached,